Imagine a single statement shaking the entire Middle East. A senior advisor to Iran's supreme leader recently declared that the region is not in a ceasefire, but in a war phase, which can be interrupted at any time, and the next conflict will determine the end of the struggle. Those words are heavy. They hint at more than tension, more than political maneuvering. They hint at a turning point that could reshape the future of the region. To grasp the magnitude of this declaration, we need to step back. Since the 1979 Iranian Revolution, Tehran's leadership has placed opposition to Israel at the very core of its foreign policy. But this hasn't been a conventional war. Instead, it has been a shadow conflict. Assassinations of scientists, cyber operations, intelligence battles, and proxy wars stretching from Syria to Lebanon, from Gaza to Iraq. For decades, this rivalry has burned beneath the surface, erupting only in brief bursts of open confrontation. Israel, for its part, has long pursued what it calls the octopus doctrine. The idea is simple. Strike not only at Iran's proxies, Hezbollah in Lebanon, militias in Iraq, or groups in Gaza, but also at the head of the octopus itself, Tehran. This has led to covert operations inside Iran, targeted airstrikes in Syria, and an unending cyber chess match. On the other side, Iran embraces what it calls forward defense. Instead of waiting for threats to reach its borders, it projects power outward by arming and supporting allies across the region, surrounding Israel with multiple fronts of potential pressure. And then came the summer of 2025. By mid-June, the Middle East was on fire. Missiles rained across borders, drones filled the skies, and Israel faced waves of attacks from Iran and its allies. In turn, Israeli jets struck targets deep inside Syria and beyond. For many, this wasn't just another escalation. It felt like the beginning of something bigger, a clash neither side could easily walk back from. Iran's leaders framed this war as a test, and in many ways it was. Tehran wanted to prove that its missile technology, its drone fleets, and its regional allies could pierce through what was once considered the world's most advanced air defense network. For years, Israel's Iron Dome, David's Sling, and Arrow missile defense systems were seen as nearly unbeatable shields. But on August 17th, Ali Larijani, the secretary of Iran's National Security Council, gave a chilling account. He stated that the Israelis had the most advanced defensive capabilities, but Iran's missile barrage during the middle of the war had completely left them helpless. That statement was not mere propaganda. It was a message that Iran believed it had proven the limits of Israeli defense technology. And for the first time, Israeli officials themselves admitted that their systems were strained, even overwhelmed, by sheer volume. This doesn't mean Israel is defenseless, but it does mean the balance of fear is shifting. Now combine this with the breaking update from Iraq. According to reports from Saudi outlet Al-Sharq Al-Awsat, the United States has begun repositioning and even withdrawing from certain high-security areas in Iraq. This move is significant. Washington has long kept a strong military presence in Iraq, not only to counter ISIS, but also as a check on Iranian influence. If American forces are stepping back now, it signals two things. First, that Washington anticipates an escalation between Israel and Iran that could spill across borders, and second, that U.S. troops are being relocated to avoid becoming direct targets in a possible wider war. Think about that. American repositioning doesn't just mean caution. It means the Pentagon is reading the map of the Middle East and preparing for a conflict that could spread fast, from Gaza to Lebanon, from Syria to Iraq, even to the Gulf. So what does Iran actually want when it talks about a final battle? It's not only about military victory, it's about redefining the entire regional order. For Tehran, this struggle is ideological and political. It wants to end Israel's dominance, weaken U.S. influence, and rally the Arab and Muslim world around its vision of resistance. For Israel, on the other hand, survival is the only option. Tel Aviv views Iran as an existential threat, not only because of its missile program and nuclear ambitions, but because Iran's allies are positioned on almost every one of Israel's borders. This is why every word spoken now carries massive weight. When an Iranian military advisor says, "We are not in a ceasefire, but in a war phase," he is signaling that Tehran does not believe this conflict is frozen. Instead, it is a live fuse that can ignite at any moment. And the timing matters. The Middle East is undergoing tectonic shifts. Gulf states like Saudi Arabia and the UAE, once expected to form closer ties with Israel under normalization deals, are now hedging, watching the battlefield carefully before making commitments. Turkey, always a wild card, sees opportunity in playing both sides. Egypt, burdened by economic troubles, fears instability spilling into Sinai. Meanwhile, Russia and China are deepening ties with Iran, Moscow to distract the West, and Beijing to secure energy routes and strategic partnerships. The United States, while still a critical player, is stretched thin, balancing Europe, Asia, and now once again being pulled back into the vortex of the Middle East. But beyond geopolitics, there is the human cost. In Israel, ordinary families live under constant readiness, listening for sirens, racing to shelters, trying to maintain a sense of normal life. In Iran, years of sanctions have already strained society, and the idea of another long conflict raises fears of more economic pain and isolation. In Lebanon, Gaza, Syria, and Iraq, civilians are caught in the middle, with little control over decisions made in distant capitals. The phrase, "final battle," might sound like strategy to politicians and generals, but for millions of people, it means uncertainty, fear, and survival. The psychological war is just as fierce as the physical one. Iran wants to show strength, projecting that Israel's defenses can be cracked. Israel wants to project resilience, demonstrating that even under pressure, it can strike back hard. The United States wants to show it will not abandon allies, while quietly moving pieces on the board to protect its forces. Every statement, every movement, every missile launch is part of this psychological game, designed to influence not just military strategy, but global perception. So, will the next war truly be the final battle, as Tehran suggests? Or will it be another devastating chapter in a conflict with no real end? History tells us that neither side can truly eliminate the other. But history also tells us that wars often break out when leaders convince themselves they are at a decisive turning point, when they believe the next strike could change everything. What makes this moment unique is the convergence of all these elements: advanced weapons, exhausted populations, shifting alliances, and a sense on both sides that time is running out. For Israel, the fear is that Iran is inching closer to nuclear capability. For Iran, the fear is that a future where Israel is fully normalized in the Arab world would isolate Tehran completely. Each side feels pressured to act sooner rather than later. That's why the latest statements matter. Ali Larijani boasting about Israel's defenses being cracked, the U.S. repositioning forces in Iraq, advisors to Iran's supreme leader warning of an inevitable showdown. These are not isolated events. Together they form a picture of a region where the margin for error has never been thinner, and so we return to the advisor's words. The next war will determine the end of the conflict. Whether that's true or not, one thing is clear. The Middle East is bracing for something extraordinary, and the world is watching, wondering if we are closer than ever to that decisive moment.